A unique hobby is buzzing in popularity. Many people are trying their hand at beekeeping. But before you suit up and bring home a hive, there are a few important things to consider. Today, we are sharing key questions every beginner should ask before getting started with beekeeping. From space requirements to hive maintenance, find out if this hobby is right for you. McKay Opeifa is a master beekeeper with 15 years of experience. She also teaches beekeeping classes, hosts honey tastings, and considers herself overly passionate about beekeeping and pollinators. Welcome, McKay.
Hey, great introduction. That's so fun. Yeah.
Well, you know what? This is the first for me. I've never met a master beekeeper.
Okay.
So how does one become a master beekeeper?
Well, so I have a background in entomology. I've done insects for quite a while, and then I got into beekeeping. You have to have a couple of years experience before you can opt into the program to become a master beekeeper. I did my program through Cornell, so I flew out to Ithaca and I did all my tests, and I stood in front of Cornell professors, and it was very intimidating. And so that, I don't know, it's quite a journey. It's something that I've been passionate about for a really long time.
Well, that is so neat. And I even found out that you've got beehives on rooftops of local businesses in town, right?
It was really important for me to connect with the community. I think a lot of people say, save the bees, but they don't know what they're talking about. So to educate people and to be involved is important to me. So like public coffee downtown, like on 9th and 9th, and then the avenues, public coffee, we have bees there, City Home Collective, Table X, a couple of different businesses. And it's great because we get in with the employees, they can get up on the roof with us, and they can learn about bees, and then we give them all the honey. So like, public coffee will use their honey in the coffees and things, and like City Home Collective, as they during like consultations, they have their honey, and it's just it's really fun to be able to engage everyone. Yeah.
Well, and it sounds like this is kind of a trend that people are kind of jumping on board with.
Yeah, I mean, the homestead thing is like a huge thing, and it's like bees is like the last puzzle piece, but you don't really know what you're doing. So it's something that you should know what you're doing before you get into it.
And I like that you've got some questions for us to ask ourselves. So walk me through those. If someone is thinking, okay, I want to go down this road and try this out.
So a lot of times people just think, I like honey, I'll get bees. And a lot of times honey is not something that is a result of being a beekeeper. A lot of things can go wrong and you don't harvest honey one year. Or even like if you're trying to build up your honey or your hive, you let the bees keep the honey. It's their food. So if your motive is honey, you're going to get frustrated and it's not going to be very successful. You have to do it for the love of the bees. You have to really dive in to learn about the bees. You have to understand kind of what's going wrong. There's a million things that could go wrong in your hives, and you have to be there to problem solve and do all of that. And it requires a lot of education. It requires a lot.
It doesn't sound like it's a set up, walk away kind of thing.
Not at all.
Right?
Not at all. It's sticky. It's hot in the summertime. It's not. Sometimes it's not fun. Definitely not set. And people think it's set it and forget it, and they'll set up a hive and it will suffer. And it's just like, well, great. Now, we're not adding to any, like it's. So you've got
to have the commitment. You got to know what your motive is and be really into it that way.
Absolutely.
What about space?
So bees will forage 3 to 5 miles outside of their hive, which is incredible. So if you have a 5-mile property, then it will be all your own. But you have to consider what's in that 3 to 5 miles. And so if you have a small backyard, you can keep bees. But you want to be aware if like the neighbor down the road is spraying his apple trees, and it's going to affect your bees. If your neighbor is really big on spraying their lawn, that's going to affect your bees. But in Utah, the requirements are it has to be in your backyard, and you have to be 3 feet away from a property line. So if you can check those 2 boxes and you're aware of your surroundings, that it's going to be a healthy environment for the bees, then you can go for it. And like, I mean, the hives we have at Public and City Home, they're on the roof, and roofs work too.
They work great.
As long as it's in the back area and it's away from a property line.
Okay, so those are the spacings. Is there somewhere we can actually go to see all the Utah laws for this?
Yeah, utah.gov, and you have to go and like register your hive if you're going to get a hive. It's like $10. But they'll have all the requirements there.
Okay, so we can learn everything we need to know. Now, you have a recommended like testing trial period way of doing things with like a bee hotel. Explain this to me.
Here's the idea. You have an entire ecosystem in your backyard already of pollinators. And when people say save the bees, there are 20,000 different species of bees. Honeybees is just a single thread of that. So if you're saying save the bees and all you care about is honeybees, it's about as dumb as saying save the birds and all you care about is chickens. Like, it's one little thread.
Yeah.
And you have your bumblebees, your sweat bees, your mason bees, and they're in your backyard right now. And so sometimes you'll bring in this hive, which introduces 80,000 to 100,000 different bees, and they consume all of the food, and that pushes out all these native pollinators. And then in a year, you're like, I'm sick of this, it's too sticky, you take the hive away. It will take 3 to 5 years for your hive to balance back out again, which is crazy. So you don't want to, if you have a great ecosystem going, you don't want to disrupt it.
Yeah.
So if you get a bee hotel, and these are becoming more popular. I saw one at Costco the other day, kind of blew my mind. It's a little hut that will have these little bamboo shoots where the solitary bees make their home. So if you put one of these these little bee hotels in your yard and it fills up really fast, you know that you have a really great thing going. And you probably shouldn't be a beekeeper.
Okay, there you go. I like being able to test it out. Real quick, also tell me, like, roughly time commitment and cost to get started.
So roughly it'll be an hour every 2 weeks if your hive is doing really well. You'll be in your hive doing hive checks every 2 weeks. But very seldom does everything go well. Your queen dies and you got to get in the hive again, or the mites are in, so you got to do your mite check and your mite treatments or whatnot. Honey harvest is a full day.
So it's always more than expected, right? It's like any hobby or an animal in the house, it's going to be more time.
Yeah.
What about startup costs?
So I did all the math, and for a startup cost, it's about $600.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you'll have your add-ons of things that come up as surprises. But skiing is, how much is that hobby?
There you go. Right, you got to think about what you want your hobby to be.
This is great, cheap relative to other things. But I think it's completletely worth it.
McKay, your wealth of knowledge amazes me. Where can we learn more from you?
I mean, Instagram is my jam. I'm always sharing things on Instagram. I have a YouTube channel that's very minimal, but it does break down very basics, all the beginning stuff, like how to install a hive. I'm going through all the different equipment, pros and cons, and it's a great little resource.
We'll link everyone over to your stuff from our site. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.